Welcome to today's Just Call Dad episode, where I get to talk to Josh, who not only is a friend of mine, but was a former athlete. Josh has so many special things to share with us today. One of the really cool things that I know about Josh is the hardest working athlete that I've had. Josh always wanted to succeed, he always wanted to be his best, and sometimes he would put others in front of his own success. Josh is now learning how to focus on him and how to better himself in this new season as Josh begins his process of getting married in April and hoping to become a dad who is just a call away. Josh, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, son. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk with you today. Just in this context, I feel like the last time you and I talked, you were learning and growing so much, and you were really excited about some of the things that your life was doing, all the changes you were having. So,
Mm.
how are those changes going? I know you've had some big ones recently.
Yeah, I have had some big ones. The biggest change is I got a new job, right? I started doing health and life insurance, and when I tell you it's been a incredible grind, it's been an incredible grind.
Mm.
But it's been a blessing too. Hard work pays off at the end of the
Sure.
day.
Well, you're
Absolutely,
helping
absolutely.
people,
Yeah,
right? You're
and that's what
finding a
that's what
way
I
to
want to
help.
do. Exactly.
Well, and that's the kind of person you are, and I think as I look back at you and I were just chatting a bit before, you as an athlete, you were always the first one to work hard. You were always the first one to show up for a workout, to give your best effort. And I think sometimes athletes like that oftentimes exhaust themselves, right? Because we want to help everybody, we want to be a member of the team, and there comes a point where you have to hit pause on that, and you have to decide, okay, what do I need right now, and what's going to bring me life? And so that's my hope for you. It sounds like selling the life insurance, helping people, doing that is really a dream opportunity for you at this season of life.
Hmm.
So, well, I really want to talk just for a little bit, Josh, about not only your career, but you as a person. So, our listeners on the Just Call Dad podcast have been really excited to hear people's stories. So, I want to give you a couple minutes before we get into any questions or any chats about you, just to tell our listeners about your story a little bit. Give us some background on who you are, some of the core things about what's made Josh the way he is today.
Oh shoot, you kind of put me on the spot on that one, but
Oh, that's what I do.
so my name's Josh. Like Sean was saying, I grew up in Delaware, Ohio, born and raised. I was adopted at a very young age, and I don't think I know my parents. They definitely built me who I am to be today. They instilled a lot of grit and wanting to take care of people. They raised me right for sure. I couldn't be more happy to have them as my parents. Um, I later then, growing up through Delaware, I played sports. I played football, baseball, basketball, ran track, and that's when I met Sean, and we became friends after that. And as of recently, I worked a crazy job renting out exotic cars. That was an eye opener, and it changed my perspective on a lot of things. But knowing that, um, I had to make a switch to something that I was actually helping people and actually getting to, change, make change, not quick money.
That's what's interesting, Josh, is as we grow and as we age, we're going to change. Our motivations aren't always going to change, but how we get there does. And one thing that you just talked about right there, which I think could become a theme of what we talk about today, is how you worded being adopted. So you don't know this about my story, but I have a god brother that was adopted into our family. And it's really special to me to hear about adoption stories. And I think on the Just Call Dad podcast, we haven't really talked about that yet. And so I definitely want to let that be a little bit of a theme for today's podcast, is this concept of finding your identity in who you are and not necessarily in all the things that happened prior or all the things that could have happened, but being proud of the fact that you're adopted into a family who chose you, who they made that conscious decision to say, this is my son. I'm proud of him. And as a coach, I feel like for the last 15 years, that's a mentality I've tried to keep is I never know what kids' stories are that come to me. I don't always get the opportunity to sit down after like this with you, Josh, and talk to a kid about the positive impact that I've tried to have on their life, or even know all of the things that went into making them who they are. And so today, as I talk to you, I think about how many athletes that coaches like myself work with that we don't necessarily know what role we play in their story. And so when you shared that today, that's very powerful, and it's something we can talk about, and we can definitely open the eyes to people who may be listening to this that don't really have a connection to that, of what that looks like to be adopted into a family, how that looks to be who you are today because of that. I mean, think how special that is for some listeners that might not even understand what that experience was like. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that today.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. It's something I'm really proud to, feel. Not everyone can, not everyone has that experience.
Right.
And to the ones that do, that it's special because you were chosen at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So
That's powerful. And if you think about our Just Call Dad mission, it's all about being a dad who's just a call away. And Josh, I think about this and I speak some life into your story to think about the type of dad that you're going to be because of that experience, right? Because you get to change the narrative in a way. You had somebody who chose you, and now you get to choose your son or your daughter or whatever opportunity that you have, and you get to show them that love thanks to the choice that someone made for you. I just think that's so special, and that's honestly one of the missions of our Just Call Dad podcast is to find so many things around our world, whether it's adoption, NICU babies for me, and the story that my wife and I went through. I had a recent guest who talked about having a diabetic in the family. I have, talked with people about ADHD and different things that everybody walks through. And we all have these missions in our life, and very rarely do we share those missions. And so I look forward to seeing the type of dad that you become with that story that you just told me as well. Speaking of that, Josh, you talk about sports, you talk about athletics, you talk about adoption. There's so many cool things that we can kind of unpack in this episode. But one thing I
yeah.
want to unpack before we get started on digging into some of that story is how are you using some of those things from sports, from football, from track in your life currently? Do you feel like they're transitioning into today's life well, or do you feel like sometimes you wish you could go back and make some changes back to old Josh?
Mm, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? I wish I could go
Absolutely.
back and change a lot of things, but
Sure.
if I think I know if I would have changed one thing back then, I would not have ended up who I am today. You know,
Mm, powerful.
w- you making me do the 400, that was something I
Yeah,
didn't want to do, but I did
absolutely.
it.
You did. You did.
you know,
And you're better because of it, right?
Exactly. It was an opportunity, to get better at something I've never done, and it's taking a leap of faith. And I think I've spent a lot of my life taking leaps of faith,
Mm,
seeing if something's gonna figure itself out or work out. But I had to put 110% effort into whatever I did because it was that big of a leap.
mm.
So that's
That's
one thing
powerful.
that it's one thing that I just instilled in my life, and it's been working ever since growing
I
up.
love that.
Thank you,
So
thank you.
let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
The question I posed was really, really two-folded on purpose. I wanted to know, are you using what you had from the past now, and would you change it to help you today? And you answered both with one phrase, which is leap of faith. And I want to talk about that idea of the 400-meter dash for a second. So
Mm.
Ethan did an interview with Emily Richards, and we had an experience to be on the team. You were around Emily and just her grit and her determination. And it's really
Mm.
interesting to think about Ethan, to think about Ethan Tuckies, who we're talking about right now, and you guys are close. To think about yourself, to think about those athletes that we all have different stories, right? And at
Mm.
some point, the race is going to be done, right? The race is going to be ran. You're going to be on the end of the race, sitting on the sidelines, feeling fatigued, right? Just like a 400.
Mm.
And who you are is not who you were when you were running, but who you were when you were running informs who you are. And so what I would say about that, with whether it's someone like Emily who's still competing professionally, someone like Ethan who has stopped, someone like yourself who has stopped, as a coach, I love this concept of what did I do then that I can use now? Because when I look
Mhm.
back, Josh, as a coach, I just stepped down actually as the head coach. I don't know if you knew that. I
No, I
stepped down
didn't.
because it was time for me to step down. So I walked through a really
Mhm.
tough health season last fall, went through a lot of different things, and I was reminded how important my family is and how much time I was spending away from my daughters. And so as I was healing, I'm like, where do I want to heal? Well, I love coaching, but I need to heal around my family. But I
Mhm.
also have been very sentimental over the last few months because I miss it. I don't miss the stress of every day. I don't miss what it took from me, but I miss these types of interactions. I miss the opportunity to
Mhm.
tell a kid, hey, you know what? This race doesn't mean anything now, but it will later. Because think about this, Josh, whether it's you, whether it's Ethan, whether it's Emily, whether it's any of the athletes that I've had a chance to coach, my number one goal has always been to develop a kind of human who is resilient, who has
Yeah.
what it takes to not just run a race, but to use the lesson from the race no matter the outcome. And to me, that's what you're doing. And so, as a coach, as somebody who's been proud of what I've built, I have to remember this that there's always going to be interactions with kids that I will remember, good and bad. We're imperfect people, right? Would I go back and
Mhm.
change things? Absolutely. But to your point, if I went back and changed it, you might not be the person you are today, and I might not be the person that I am. So I love that concept of leap of faith. So let's just unpack that, and maybe you could even go into detail on some of these leaps of faith that you want to speak into your life, into your story as you go into maybe being a dad. Like what does that look like for you? If you were to talk about that, what comes to your mind? Getting married, maybe having a son, having a daughter. What type of emotions does that bring up, and what kind of goals does that make Josh have?
I wanna. That
It's a good question, and I know it's
It
deep
is a
in it.
good question. It's a deep one for sure. But
Yeah.
my fiance and I, we've talked about having kids, and
Mm.
it's maybe not necessarily a right now thing, because we're still trying to build, still trying to
Yep.
figure everything out. We're in our mid 20s,
Yeah. Right.
so we got to figure out the base level of the house, and then
Hmm.
build on top of that, and start adding people to it. We got a dog, and we take
Mm.
care of our dog well,
That's awesome.
so it's
What
yeah.
kind of dog do you guys have?
So she's a pity. Her name's Rosie. She's
Awesome.
adorable. I absolutely
Awesome.
love her,
You should
but
have brought her
she
on as a guest today.
next
All right,
time for
next time.
sure.
Deal.
But I do look forward to having children in my future. I think it's something that will be exciting, and to see myself in a small child. Like
Mhm.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I think one thing you said there is if I can give you a piece of advice, you're
Yeah,
absolutely going to see yourself in your kids, and the things
it
about your
scares me.
kids, yeah, that you see about yourself are going to frustrate you the most.
Yeah.
I just had we have like little family meetings and we sit down in
Hmm.
circles, and I'm a big fan of circles and everything we do because it connects us together. And we
Yeah.
sat down today because my youngest daughter, she was sick last night, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting over whatever she had. She threw up a few times. You know how it goes being a dad. My wife's helping. I'm trying to help. I'm delirious in the middle of the night. I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to some comedians actually yesterday, joking about a very similar situation.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's nice to laugh as you go through some of these things. That's why we try to add silly to serious on this podcast because sometimes you just got to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So you got one kid doing that, then the other kids get up in the morning and they're all dysregulated because, whatever, and they're tired and I'm tired and they're fighting and arguing, and my middle daughter then kicks my coffee cup over on accident. She has a meltdown. She starts crying. I'm trying not to blow up and yell because I'm
Mm-hmm.
tired, but my brain's trying to figure it out. My oldest daughter is then yelling at my middle daughter for yelling. So you've got this constant, bubble of things. So
Yeah.
we all sit down in a circle, we have a conversation, and we say, okay, guys, let's all talk about something we can do better right now. And so one of the things that I'm working on as a dad is when I see those qualities in my kids that I have, is owning up to my mistakes as well. So I try to tell them what I did wrong, but I don't want to use that word wrong, but what I could do better
Yeah.
before I tell them what they could do better, right? And so I think as a dad, as a coach, that's a mentality I've always tried to take. Hopefully that's one I've instilled in you as well, is like to take ownership on your
For sure,
actions.
for sure. Sometimes I think I do that too often.
Absolutely.
I take ownership for everyone's problems, and that's something
Yeah.
I need to do less, but it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So I'm a recovering people pleaser as well. I actually journaled something down yesterday. I try to come up with ideas as I'm writing. So I have like a notes app on my phone, and I don't like write on my phone, but I just jot down stuff that I want to add into books that I'm writing. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the phrases I was writing was, "You won't be missed by all." And that's really powerful to think about it because, Josh, a lot of times we spend our time, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's as a dad, whether it's professionally, athletically, whatever we want, trying to make people happy that aren't going to miss us. And I don't mean that in a wrong way or a mean way. We just have to realize there's very few people in our life that are our core circle, which is why I like to sit in those circles and to create that.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't love other people and sacrifice and give. We have to be really cautious of who we let in that circle. And so I agree with you. I struggle with that as well. As a coach, I would say that was my biggest flaw. I see more of my flaws than my success. And one of my flaws is I would take everyone's responsibility on me. And for years, I did that. And then I realized that that was actually creating anxiety in me. And I was trying to
Yeah.
help kids through the very same thing that I was struggling with. And they had no idea. You had no idea. I tell Ethan this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When I was coaching you guys, I was having anxiety attacks and I didn't even know what they were. And
Really?
so, oh yeah, I would just hide it. They would happen
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I was up in front of the kids talking. I didn't really know what they were actually until last year when I had a panic
Mm-hmm.
attack. But I would like take it and I would like mold the anxiety into motivation. And it was almost like no one knew. Like it just looked like it was like seamless. But in my head, I absolutely did. So,
Oh, you're freaking out in your head, and then
yeah.
everything just. Well, shoot, when I was working at Seventh Gear, the exotic rental company, it was entire time I was anxious every single
Mm,
day. It felt like I was tiptoeing on eggshells and that amount of stress, but I was performing at my peak level
yep.
of
Yeah.
just amazing. I was like,
Mm,
this is great, but this is bad for my health.
yeah.
Like,
Isn't that interesting?
mm-hmm.
How
It's
many
very
men
interesting.
function like that. And I mean women too, but you and I can speak specifically to men's mental health. I would love to have your fiance and my wife talk about it in their own context as a female, but for men, I think sometimes we feel that unneeded pressure to be in those stressful situations, don't we? It feels like we have to. It feels like it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like told to us from a young age, whether it's athletically or whether it's socially, like you have to go into the toughest environment. You've got to be a bison and run to the storm. But like you want to do that, and that's a good thing. But it seems like we almost create it as a bad habit, don't we?
Yeah, but I think too, part of it is when it starts to affect you like a lot is when you're not knowing how to cope with it. Because
Mm,
life's always stressful. That's never gonna go away. It depends on what job you're doing. There's levels to it, but I think if you can manage that stress in a healthy way, you're going to succeed, like
hmm.
regardless of where you go. It's building that repetition of I'm
Yeah,
determined to do this. If you instill that, it's stressful, yeah, but like you were saying, you got to smile. You got to be
yeah,
happy.
right. Well, and it's interesting, Josh, because I wish I would have had a podcast like this when I was your age. And I don't mean to
Hmm.
talk down to you by age because you're wise beyond your years. And I believe truly wholeheartedly in the power of youth and the idea that I can learn from people younger than me, oftentimes just as much or more than people older than me. So I appreciate your youth and your energy. But I wish when I was at that stage, I would have had something like this as a podcast to listen to prior to becoming a dad,
Hmm.
prior to becoming um, aware of so many things. I think you're at an interesting age when I became aware of anxiousness. It's almost like I realized, whoa, this isn't how you have to function, or I don't
Yeah.
know, I don't know how to cope with this because I don't know if we're presented with, just like you said, healthy coping mechanisms for those
Hmm.
anxious thoughts. And so I just wonder how you have navigated that in this season of life. How are you coping with that? How are you being proactive with some of those things?
So, it hasn't always been healthy for me. I will be super transparent and say that,
Yeah.
had my bouts, with some drinking problems at times, nothing crazy, but using alcohol to like supplement, oh, I'm stressed, so I'm gonna
Yep.
drink. Like, no, you can't do that. But as of recently, you're working out. I'm working out every single day. That drives me to even be more successful. If I have a stressful day, I hit the gym. If I get stressed at work, I have a healthy snack or
Hmm.
something like that. It's finding ways to get yourself out of that mental loop, Right? You
So
know what I
yeah,
mean?
absolutely. So that's actually called a scarcity loop. So I did some research on that scarcity loop when
Hmm.
I was writing my book Designed to Compete. And it's this concept of like it's actually designed with food in mind. So like here's food, I need food. I can't find food. I'm gonna do everything I can to find the food again. And so you're like afraid. It's like a natural cycle, and we
Hmm.
can do the same thing with like anxious thoughts. And so if we're not careful, we're gonna seek out the nearest solution to the anxiety, and oftentimes it's proximity, right? So if I have it in my head as alcohol or whatever it is. It could even be something very minor. Like it could be something
Hmm.
very small, an addiction to buying something, right? Like
Yeah.
I think about microtransactions on a video game, right? Like those are a hit of dopamine, and then
Yeah.
immediately you feel regret afterwards. So like just I mean it doesn't have to be anything huge, right? Like it could be small things. It could be buying candy at the store. All things like
Hmm.
they're by themselves can be okay, but when done at the wrong time in the wrong proximity to that anxious response, it becomes an addictive cycle. And so I've done a lot of research on that as well, and I'm really intrigued by the way you're sharing that. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves and be
Hmm.
okay that we failed. I think that's another piece, Josh, that you were talking about earlier that I struggle with is like sometimes I beat myself up for failing, right? Like, I wish I wouldn't
I
have
do every
spent
day.
all right. But what if we don't have to? What if that's not the norm? What if that's something we've created as our norm? And so that's where
Hmm.
that's my mission and things that I write for kids and things that I write for athletes is how can I create a narrative that you tell yourself that's better than the one that we've been telling ourselves, right? Which is that
Yeah.
I have to do this, right? I wish I would have done this. A lot of those types of phrases. And so I love hearing that you're consciously using the gym or consciously using healthy eating, whatever it is for you. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be the same thing every time, but I love
No,
that
no,
you're
it
doing that.
doesn't. I appreciate that. And just back to what you were saying, on the failure points. It's okay to fail. It's 110% okay to fail. It's how you get up from it. Like with insurance, right? With me selling insurance, I make 200, $300 an afternoon. I might get
Yeah,
10 people to answer. Is that a
right,
failed day? No. But it takes steps to get to success. you
right.
know so when you
Well,
change the
that's a lot of
narrative of.
effort. That's a lot of effort. All right. I mean, like you're putting yourself out there, man. Right?
Mhm.
Like that's hard.
Yeah.
And but so if you do that with thinking you're going to fail, though, like you're going to fail, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is that? What's that phrase? Preparation it helps us limit failure, right? Because failure becomes a fuel instead of a final or finality. So you're using every call they don't pick up as like, all right, next one, here we go, as opposed to,
Exactly.
oh, right. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same fuel that can be burned so differently. That's
Mhm.
cool. I mean, so tell us that real quick as we kind of get to the 20 minute. We're going to try to keep this about 30 just because I want to keep awareness of 30 minutes is like really where a lot of people start kind of losing focus and wanting to do
Yeah.
something else. At least I know I do. So let's
Yeah.
let's really focus in on that. So right now, Josh is focused on, hey, I'm going to make these calls to people. I'm going to sell this insurance to them because it truly brings me life because I'm helping them. So
Mhm.
walk us through your typical day right now and how you are attacking life. I want to hear like this is my day. Here's how I'm going after it. You've kind of given details about it. Let's put it in a
Mhm.
routine so that somebody
Yeah.
that might be listening to this could have something that they could listen to as advice.
Absolutely. I will say office jobs, or in also being my own boss, there's a lot to it, but
Mm-hmm.
just sitting in the office all day making calls, it's boring, It's not
Yeah,
it's not
Kim,
fun. Nobody
absolutely.
wants to do
Right.
that. So I wake up every morning, except for Sundays, 6:30. Wake up 6:30 on the dot. Take my dog out. Get to the gym by 7. Um, trying to think,
Yeah.
hour or so workout. Nothing crazy. Hit the sauna. Make sure stay hydrated. Throughout the workout. Um, Breakfast at 9:30. Office by 10. I'm at the office from 10 to 8. But in between that, time I'm at the office, I'm constantly learning. You
Hmm.
know, whether it's a new product that comes out, whether it's learning a different way to, like, oh, this person wants this. How do I pivot them into this other product because they can't get this product? It's
Hmm.
always constantly learning throughout the day. I get home, relax, read a book, then I'm in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I feel old
Right.
for doing that. I feel older for doing that, but it's the key to success. Or if I'm stay up late on the weekend, I very rarely do I play video games now. But when I do, I stay up pretty late, I will say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you got to have that, escape from the everyday. Whether that's music, whether that's playing video games, go and play some sports. You finding that exit to your routine keeps you sane too. Yeah, because when
Mm-hmm.
you get into that routine, it's a grind. You lose track of the days too. I will say, but
Yeah.
because you're focused.
For sure. Well, and I think the grind that you're in will shift at some point when you do become a dad, if that's something that's in your story, because
Mm-hmm.
it'll change forms, but it won't change pressure.
Yeah.
I remember the exact type of grind you're describing, but as a coach, because I would start my day, I get up about 4:30. That's dad life, hashtag
Yeah.
dad life. And so I would get up early and then I would try to do everything you're doing as well. And I'd
Mm-hmm.
cram a teaching day and a coaching day into one day, like pretty much two jobs. So I totally feel that. And I would get done and get home about 9 o'clock some nights after coaching, which I think part of it, I realized that's why I had to stop, if that makes sense. It's like, how do
Yeah.
you, I'm a lot like you are. I don't know how to have a half speed on what I go after. And I think one thing I'm learning, Josh, is the exact thing that you said, and I would word it this way, is learning your pace. Is
Mm-hmm.
understanding I wish I would have understood this at a younger age, is how to pace myself better. Because I would go all in to certain areas of my life wherever I was, and the other area would suffer. And it would suffer without sometimes me even knowing until it was completely falling apart. So
Mm-hmm.
I really like your advice for our listeners of having a routine to a point, allowing yourself the opportunity to heal before the hurt is so bad that it's you need emergency emotional surgery. And I think
Right.
that's kind of something to look at. I mean, really think about our body. If you can kind of get ahead of some symptoms, you may
Mm-hmm.
not avoid a big one that could happen to you, but you really might. And so I think that's interesting. We talk emotion, we talk mental health, we talk specifically to men in this podcast, but we do have some females that are going to be coming on and giving some of their dad experiences as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to talk about just specifically to guys, don't be afraid to just have fun, right? Just enjoy yourself. If that's calling your buddy up and chatting for 20 minutes, and it's awkward at first because you're like, dude, I haven't talked to you in 6 months, and you don't really know how to do it. Do it. If that's hey, can hopping on a video game, if that's going out and getting the gym or playing in a men's league or doing something, whatever you need to do it, and don't wait, and don't tell yourself I'll do it tomorrow, right? And that's a lot of I think maybe what you're already feeling, and I know what I've had to learn
Mm-hmm.
the hard way, I
Yeah.
guess, is
Yeah.
that
It's taking a leap of faith on yourself at that point.
it is.
Just go have fun. Every day's, I kind of live, I live wildly in a sense. I live every day like, tomorrow's never guaranteed. I'm gonna
Right.
enjoy every single ounce of that today has. For me, for everyone that's around me, because I want to have fun. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to, you know, be all mopey about something. Like I want to have fun every single day that I live on this beautiful earth. I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
awesome.
yeah, you got to. It
Well, I
adds
think
it
that's a
adds
coping, right? Like you're keeping anxiety at bay by doing that. I mean, you,
yeah.
you still can have those emotions and those feelings, or depression can try to talk to you or try to work biologically in your brain, but it has a really hard time when you don't let it fire, right? It has a really
Hmm.
hard time when you don't let it in the house. It might be
Right.
knocking, but it's not coming in if you have that mentality. And so I think that's really cool, man. I think that more people need that, and honestly, I'm encouraged by that as well. So thank you for taking that mindset on life.
Yeah, no, not a problem. It's I wanna make sure that people my age. I look around and I see people my age. They're doing the everyday. Just bore. And I don't want to. I don't want to say. Let me preface. I don't want to say boring.
Yeah,
But they're not taking.
mundane. They're going about this like they feel like they have to, right? They're stuck, right? This is
Yeah.
like what you have to do if you're mid 20s, what you have to do if you're mid 30s. But you know what I mean? Like it could be said for any generation. But
Hmm.
you just feel, yeah, yeah, go on. I like it.
No, I want to make sure like people know like just go if you want to go skydiving, go do it. If you want to go build a business, go do it. Like it doesn't matter. It's 2025, you know? It's 2025, you know. It's the future's here to do the possibilities are endless. If you think of something and you're creative enough to go do it, don't be scared to.
Yeah. And people will come alongside you to support you. And I think that's one thing that we have to remember.
Mhm.
As a coach, I think giving up coaching, one of the hardest things for me was exactly what you just said, is I've been trying to be a dream catcher for so many kids for so many years. And I've always just wanted more than anything to see a kid believe in themselves.
Mhm.
There is something powerful about that. And what's hard as a coach is when you work with as many athletes as we do, we can't do that. Like we just can't because there's always going to be kids that perceive it one way, perceive it another way, but you have to be rooted and this is why I'm here, no matter the perception or the fear. And that's the
Mhm.
concept I think that you are talking about right now. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm living and breathing. It's not to live in any other way but the best version of you and of me. And I think that's a really good clip to end on for us right now and a message for any of our listeners. So, no matter what age you are when you're listening to this, whether you're young or you feel like you're old or you're just like me, somewhere in between, trying to figure out life, you
Mhm.
have this one truth you can hold on to is that you're designed to be just who you are. And don't be afraid or let someone else's perception, reality of their own choosing impact yours. So, Josh, do you have any final words for us on today's podcast? Because today's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been an amazing Saturday morning. One thing that I want to say to, to everyone listening, um, just go do it. Just go do
Mm,
whatever's on your mind. Take the day. If you want to have a relaxing day, take it. If you want to
hmm
go work your butt off, take it. The possibilities are absolutely endless, and you can make your dreams come true if you put your mind to it.
hmm We got to get you that shirt with the D on it. I'm not wearing one right now, but that's what that means. Our D that I made that from our daughter's NICU experience. The
Yeah,
D means day, the O1 inside means opportunity. Days are limited, opportunities are limitless. What you choose to do with those opportunities, it's up to you. All right.
absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in today to Just Call Dad and just turning yourself into the best version of who you want to be. Like, don't let someone else tell you this is who you are. Don't let someone else speak into your story. Write your own story. Pick up the pen. Pick up the phone. Help is just a call away. All right. Hope everybody has a great day. Josh, thanks for joining us today
Of
on
course, of
today's
course.
episode.
Thanks.
All right. See y'all.